Welcome to another eDesign Codemakers tutorial for game design. In this video, we're going to delve a bit deeper into the Unity game engine and show you how to create game objects. Let's get started. Game objects are really important to any game because those are the bits and pieces that move around and interact. To create one within the Unity game engine, you right-click within the hierarchy menu and select Create Empty. You'll notice there are other objects we could create, but at this time, we just need an empty game object. When we make an empty game object, it comes up in our scene view. You can move it around by using the two different arrows, or you can click the blue square and you can move it to wherever you want. Now, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's a transform property. The transform property is basically the foundation for any object within a game. When you want to make something do something, that's the property that you're going to touch on. It's really important to notice it because that's what we're going to play with the most when we talk about the code behind some of our objects. To make this game object an actual object, we're going to add some bits and pieces to it. Now, we brought in some sprites earlier. Let's attach some of these sprites to our game object. If we drag over the Earl0 to our game object, Earl0 now has a body. We can actually then drag a leg over, we can make an arm. Wait a sec. He only has one arm and one leg. Now you'll remember, when I talked about the sprite sheet, we said that we could drag over another arm and another leg to make sure he has all the body parts that he needs. So let's do that. Let's bring him another arm and another leg. You'll notice that right now they have the same name, and we can change those names at will within the inspector window. So let's do that. We have Earl0, which is actually our body, so I'm going to just call it body. We have Earl2. Earl2 is a leg. We can choose whatever leg that we want it to be. I'm going to make it our right leg. Earl1 is an arm. Let's make it his right arm. Nice thing to do is drag things out so that you can see them and we can play with it later. This is another arm. Let's make it our left arm. And last leg, which is our left leg. Now, our game object seems a little weird. We've got bits and pieces all over the place, and it's just called game object. But we made Earl, so let's make sure that we rename this, and we'll call it Earl. If you want, you can spell it either way. I'm going to use that spelling for now. Let's start putting the bits and pieces together, and we can set this guy up so that we can animate him so it looks like he's walking. Our body, I believe, is in a good position. We'll leave the body where it is. One thing to know within your positions is make sure that your X and Y coordinates match where they want them to be. So our body right now is actually offset quite a bit. Make sure that your subcomponents or your children components are set to where the sprite is. You'll see that the sprite, or the game object, has a different position than the body. This position, when something is a child object, is relative to the parent object. So if we want to make sure that this is in the center of the empty game object we created, we make sure that we hit 0 and 0. Now, our right leg, we want to probably just drag into position. I think that's a good spot. Let's move our left leg now. Our left leg, we can go there. Something you'll notice is that the left leg is actually above the right leg. I think we need to change that. We can change that by actually doing something called Z positioning. And this is something I talked briefly about within 3D games. We can actually use the Z property within a 2D game, and it creates depth. So if we want to make this go a little bit deeper, I'm going to hit 1. But wait a sec, it went behind of our background. You're going to have to play around with these properties in order to make sure everything gets set up. So our lab scene currently right now is still set at a 0 depth. So let's make that go a little bit further. There we go. Now we have our leg set up properly. We can probably move it, make it a little bit better, but I think it's in a good position for now. We'll need to do the same thing with his arms in order to make sure he's set up for animation. So his right arm is set up, and we'll probably move his left arm and do the same thing as we did with his leg. There, he has a left arm. I've just put it behind his body, just because when we animate it, it will actually swing out and it'll look really interesting. I think Earl looks okay, just the way he is right now. You might want to play with some scaling and play with positioning, but for now, I believe Earl's looking good and he's ready to be animated. This concludes this presentation on game objects. We really hope you enjoyed it and look forward to presenting you with more stuff around Unity game design.